and welcome to Telling the Tale. It's the podcast in which we go through every single Telltale video game, except sometimes we get a little sidetracked and do other things, like this week. We'll be talking about what we're talking about when we talk about it, but until we talk about it, I'm your host, Mitchell Farley Wolf, and I'm joined by forever co-host Dustin Jackson.
I got like a gurgliness in my throat because I ate an apple earlier.
Wow, what a cool... All right, this is going to be a really good show.
Is that one of the deadly sins? Gurgliness?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
And that other person that you just heard is Jeff Onan.
It's me. Speaking of Douglas.
Woo!
Woo! Speaking of Douglas, it's Jeff Onan. Jeff, I want to talk a little bit about you first. Why are you here?
Oh, boy.
Why would we ever invite Jeff Onan onto this podcast?
Oh, you really caught me off guard. I didn't prepare. Is it because you owe me money?
I might.
I owe you money. One of the
you
other.
might.
Yeah.
No,
yeah. So, well, I guess I can't really explain why I'm here until you explain what the topic is for the day, because that's
fair enough. You know what? You've been keeping me honest. You no longer owe me money.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, dude. We're talking about Sea of Thieves, The Legend of Monkey Island, which is a... Would you call it a story arc? I guess it's a story arc within Sea of Thieves that just finished as of recording within the last week, I think. Or like maybe 2 weeks, actually, now.
Yeah, I think it came out not this past Thursday, but the Thursday before, I believe.
Gotcha. So a little over a week.
Right. So by the time you listen at home, listener, it'll be about 2 weeks old. That it just
that worked out
up.
So perfectly.
Yeah. So it consists of 3 episodes within Sea of Thieves that both advance the storyline of Sea of Thieves and the whole lore that game has, which it has a lot of, and also serves as effectively a whole new Monkey Island game that takes place between Curse of Monkey Island and Escape from Monkey Island, which are Monkey Islands 3 and 4. So why are we talking about it on this podcast? Well, we figure that we talked about Return to Monkey Island, which is not a Telltale game, but is sort of the sequel to Tales from Monkey Island, which is a Telltale game.
Yeah, they got ties.
Yeah, we talk about Monkey Island a lot on the show anyway, so it's relevant. And also, it's episodic. That feels pretty close in there. And also, it's just something we were going to play anyway, so we might as well do an episode. So a lot of interesting connections there. Now, Jeff, we've known you for a long time.
You've known me for a long time.
Not a question, just a thing I'm saying.
No, yeah, you have. You've known me for a long time, and I've known you almost as long. And we go back and, years and such. But the reason that I'm here is because I really like Sea of Thieves. That's kind of just my character trait.
Yeah, it's that little quirk that they write for you.
Yeah,
it's our favorite thing about you.
They roll the dice and they're like, okay, beard, short, Sea of Thieves. I'm not really that short. I shouldn't.
No, you're like
I'm mid. I'm mid.
I don't want you to be short because I think of myself as above average, and you're not that much shorter than me. You're just a little shorter than me.
I think
you're at least in the top 2 tallest people on this podcast.
I might be the same as Mitchell. It's hard to tell because he's always laying down.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, so I actually run a Sea of Thieves blog, which I've been doing since 2018, when that game came out. And
what's it called?
It is called Golden Sands Blogpost, and it's a blog. You can find it on medium.com, but you can also just find it on X/Twitter, whatever we're calling it these days. I don't know. That's the easiest way to get to it. Is just Twitter. The at Golden Sands Blog is what it is on there, but you can just Google it up. And I write like walkthrough guides. I write walkthrough guides and other things like upcoming events that are happening in Sea of Thieves, just keeping people in the loop on Sea of Thieves, which is one of those kind of living games that has events happening constantly,
Right.
limited time rewards, and new gameplay features coming out every season. So, I'm that guy.
Yeah, Sea of Thieves is a very... I'll start by saying I like it before we get into it more. And I know Dustin likes it as well. We both play relatively frequently. I should say, for me at least, probably less frequently than like really, really frequent players. But I've been playing without completely stopping or anything since it came out about 5 years ago. So we're both in there. Sea of Thieves has a story that is difficult to keep up with sometimes, because not only are there time-limited events that happen in the game that change the storyline, that affect characters in a way that persists. Not only that, but it's like all the things that can change happen in different formats, so you need to be aware of tall tales that are coming out, which is what we'll talk about today. And also, like weekly adventures. And Chris Alcock, a friend of all three of ours, wrote 2 books that are just sort of in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a whole expanded universe, lots of comic book, like one-off comic book issues and several novels. So it's a lot. It's a whole lot. But I can't help you keep up with it. I mean, my blog.
Yes, you can.
Might help a little.
Don't say that when that is the specific thing that you do.
And you do such a good job of it.
It's my one job, and I can't promise that it will work, but we'll try together. But yeah, and so you mentioned that these episodes of what we're going to be talking about today are Tall Tales.
Yeah.
Tall Tales are basically like a mission mode in Sea of Thieves that are story based.
Yes.
And they are persistent. They are not time limited events. If you listen to this a year from now, you won't have missed it. You could still play it. Because they will stay in the game permanently and just be something you can always do, which is different than some of the other things they do in Sea of Thieves, which are like limited time events that are going on. But so the Monkey Island Tall Tales, it's a story arc over 3 tales, each one probably taking about 3 hours to complete, depending on your, how you might get stuck if a puzzle was particularly hard or whatever. But
I will say this
may
third
vary,
one took over like 4 hours for me. It took a little bit of time.
It will vary by person.
I think this last one took less time than the second one did for me.
I felt the second one took longer for me, but the third one I feel drags at the end in terms of like the pacing of it. But I'm not sure.
Oh, that's interesting. I kind of feel I felt like this one I liked because it kept you kind of moving.
I have a third different opinion.
Ooh.
But we'll talk about it later. Yeah, so you're right. The Tall Tales are sort of the of everything that is added to Sea of Thieves. These are the real big feeling ones. I think it's fair to say.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of like big mechanical changes, these are the big story moments that'll really get people back in the game after playing or after maybe not playing for a little while. These are akin to if you've ever played World of Warcraft or something in that vein. These feel like the big, okay, every couple of years you'll get an expansion, like a real one, like a big expansion.
Yeah.
And this feels a bit like that. And
they have used the past couple of them, including this one, to do IP crossover stories. So
yeah.
This is an example of the world and characters of the Monkey Island video games traveling to the Sea of Thieves world and crossing over, and it's a blending of the two. You're going to see those characters cross over with each other, but really this one more than anything else feels like almost like a whole Monkey Island game.
Yeah.
Within Sea of Thieves.
Yeah. It's crazy. I love how meaty these are.
Yeah, this is a really impressive thing, especially like considering what Monkey Island is. Monkey Island feels like this very prestigious, almost unusable intellectual property in a way. where a lot of people in the know like it. It might be, sometimes you hear the phrase like, "Oh, this guy, he's like a musician's musician." Monkey Island kind of feels like that for games, a little bit, where it wasn't the most popular thing in the world ever, like for anyone. So the fact that there was a 13-year gap between Tales of Monkey Island in 2009 and the next thing, Return to Monkey Island, in 2022, was like a long time, but it wasn't really surprising that it took that long, right? Like, that just kind of felt like the end of Monkey Island. And then just 1 year after Return, we're talking about another Monkey Island game.
I feel like when Monkey Island is kind of brought out of retirement, they do a few things with it, because like last time was when they did Tales. That's also when they did the remasters for 1 and 2.
Sure.
Right.
And now, right after Return, we get this with The Legend of Monkey Island. I like that you kind of get a few things before it kind of gets shoved back in the drawer.
I guess that's what happens now.
The kitchen drawer with like the batteries and rubber bands and like whatever you keep in the kitchen drawer, you know?
Yeah.
The junk drawer.
Yeah, we'll remember this exists in a few more years.
The voice actor, I don't remember his name. I'm not really in on like all of the people that you associate with Monkey Island. You guys will know the names better than me, but the voice actor who plays Guybrush Threepwood was on an interview on the computer.
Dominic Armani?
That's it.
Armato.
Yeah. Dominic.
Yeah.
He was on an interview on the computer, on my computer, and I was looking at it, but he said that basically it feels like Monkey Island will come out of retirement every 10 years, and it'll like come in twos. They'll get the whole band back together of the people associated, and they will do like, there will be 2 big things, and then it will go away for 10 years. And that's what he said, that you have Return and the Legend of Monkey Island Sea of Thieves was this one, and then the last one was the Tales and the remasters. And so he was kind of joking that now we're gonna put it back in the kitchen.
It's a weird thing to say, considering it's a pattern of twice. Like, it's right. It's not happened that much more than just this time and last time.
Every 10 years.
Yeah.
We can assume it will continue into the next century.
Yeah, because before that, it was Escape from Monkey Island in the year 2000, which was 5 years after the previous thing before it. I think it was just the one at that time. It was just that one. But yeah,
that was before they settled into a rhythm, you know?
Yeah, rhythm of 2. Yeah. So I guess we have the, what do you think, 2031 ish?
That sounds right.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll wait until then. I'll go to play the Monkey Island game in my flying car. 2031.
We'll revive the podcast around then.
You'll have to.
God.
You'll have to run on a little treadmill to power your game machine while you, in the evenings while you're fighting in the water wars in the daytime.
So fun thing about this little group that we have on the podcast right now is all 3 of us have been co-hosts on Hyle Russell's podcast, The Conversation, which is a Donkey Kong podcast. And I think the main difference between myself and Hyle Russell is that if you ask me, what do you think about continuing this podcast into the 30s? I'll explode. And if you ask Kyle what he thinks about doing it, he's like, "Yeah, I've got game plans for the 30s. I've got a pretty good idea about what the show's going to be in the 30s."
Don't worry about it; it's all planned out.
Kyle would explode if he had to go a couple weeks without the podcast. He's like, "That's not the rules. We're supposed to do one." We got to talk about Mario Tennis on the Game Boy or something. Again.
Yeah, I'm getting excited these days. This is neither here nor there, but like Dustin and I are pretty close to wrapping up the whole thing that we're doing on this show. We only have a specific number of episodes that we can do going forward, so
that's how I feel when the moon is waning.
Say more about that.
You know, I'm like, oh, I'm getting excited. We're almost done with this moon. Get to start on the next moon.
Oh, I don't think I'll start on the next moon. I think I'll be done with the moon.
Yeah, no, I like full moon. So when moon is waning, I'm like, hurry up and get back to waxing.
Mm-hmm. You love to see him wax, but you hate to see him wane.
That's what they say.
That is what they say. So before we start talking about anything more specific, I do want to ask Jeff, just for the benefit of the listener, what is you're a big Sea of Thieves expert. What's your Monkey Island relationship?
Limited, yeah. So, a couple years ago, Sea of Thieves did a series of tall tales where they crossed over with the Pirates of the Caribbean film franchise and Disney ride, that whole IP, Pirates of the Caribbean. And so I was a fan of those movies. I was a fan of Sea of Thieves, and I kind of was researching into that, and there was a big Easter egg in there so Sea of Thieves was working with Disney to get this IP. Disney also owns Monkey Island because they own LucasArts, and so they put this Easter egg in those tall tales that referenced Monkey Island, and basically was just like a fun nod to the fans with some Easter eggs and music and stuff that implied that Guybrush Threepwood might have at one point come to the Sea of Thieves. And so that sparked my interest in being like, you know, I've always been aware that Monkey Island exists, but I don't know anything about it. I've never played it. I'm not much for those point-and-click games, the old school style point-and-click games. I never really grew up on them. My family computer was in the family room, so I didn't play a lot of computer games because you had no privacy. You know, I wanted to play in my room because if I'm playing like Tomb Raider, which is mostly about looking at an ass, I didn't want to do that.
Which is most of the games that you played at that age, I assume.
Yeah, at that age, most of them were ass-looking games,
Mm-hmm.
so I didn't want to play on the family computer. So I never played a lot of point-and-click games. So I still didn't. My interest got piqued, but I watched some YouTube videos on my computer of like a long play of the Monkey Island games, and I kind of got the gist.
Yeah, that's what's good about these games is if you just watch them on YouTube, you're not really missing that much.
Like, you're missing, I think, maybe...
You don't get the pointing and the clicking.
Some mechanical, like, feeling of solving puzzles. But in terms of if you're just trying to figure out, like, what is this world about? What is the tone? What are those story beats? If you just want that, you can get that from a video. You're only missing, like, the meat and potatoes feeling of like you're not working your muscles, you know?
Yeah.
You're not working your puzzle muscles.
That is a big part of it. The puzzle muscles are both pretty central to the series Monkey Island and also to this instance of Sea of Thieves shenaniganery, which I think is really interesting because Sea of Thieves is not built for it. And it does pretty well taking it in, like a foster child game genre. It just absorbs it.
I think it's really fun doing these Monkey Island style puzzles in the Sea of Thieves engine in a first person view.
Yeah, because the Pirates of the Caribbean thing you brought up, Jeff, that was I think that was a very logical fit because you could still just do the game that Sea of Thieves is. In whatever world, because it's a movie, so you just need to have a character from or multiple really from Pirates of the Caribbean be here, do stuff, take time, take space.
You can just do it in the way Sea of Thieves is normally played.
Yeah, and it's more about like getting that setting in there. And with Monkey Island, you have to, I guess they didn't have to, but they chose to, and it worked out to really bring in the point and click adventure feeling of it all, and incorporate the feeling of using one item from one part of the map in a completely different part of the map in order to open a door that does not seem to make sense to open that way, but you kind of have to squint a little bit with your brain. That's all in there. That's in there now, for better or for worse, and it feels very authentic.
Yeah, I think they
totally
succeeded in that. And one element of that, I think, is this: when you're making a living game like Sea of Thieves, a game that is in consistent development for 10 years, basically, at this point, because the game's been out for 5, but they started, prototyping it in 2014. So we're not quite at 10 years. But the point is, if you're one of the top lead designers on Sea of Thieves, you've basically been working on this for almost 10 years. And I think a key part of making that lifestyle work is that they do challenge themselves to do new things in Sea of Thieves that I think they don't limit themselves of what they think Sea of Thieves can be or what you can do within Sea of Thieves. So I'm excited to see them go in this direction with not just more narrative focus, which has been a kind of new thing to them in the first few years of the game. That when the game launched, there was no narrative, and then when they started doing narrative stuff, that was something new. And how does that work in Sea of Thieves? And they've kind of developed and adapted that in different ways when they did Pirates of the Caribbean. But now it's that puzzle solving and asking the question, how do you make a point and click style puzzle in a first person, you have full motion control of your character. You're not on these, set 2-dimensional screens. That challenge, I think they rose to that challenge and did a good job.
Yeah, I don't know how much of the rest of this podcast you've listened to, Jeff, if any, but we did an episode on the PlayStation 2 game CSI 3 Dimensions of Murder. And that is similar to the conceit that you just laid out of, hey, we've got this point and click collect thing kind of gameplay, but because it's ported to the PS2 and because Sony had a mandate at the time that any PS2 game, any of them, needed to be in a 3-dimensional space with a manipulatable camera, they had to redesign the game to let you walk through the vistas and to let you walk in first person and collect things. And the way that game rose to the occasion of having to translate that into 3D explorable space, and the way that this game did, are really different quality and results, among other things. But yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about because it made me realize that we have never really seen a fully explorable Melee Island. I hadn't thought about that until it became doable, that is a true thing.
It's not just a mechanical challenge in the abstract of how do we adapt this kind of gameplay to this type of way that you interact with the world, but it's also it's specific settings from the original Secret of Monkey Island that were 2-dimensional, basically. Each screen that you see in that game is just a painted scene, and they weren't necessarily designed to make sense in a 3D layout. They weren't thought of in those terms, and so there's the added challenge of taking actual locations from the Monkey Island game and realizing them in 3D in ways that make sense. They talked about when they were making the church on Melee Island down in the town, the way that the windows look on the inside and the way they look on the outside don't actually make sense.
Mm-hmm.
So they had to just reconcile how would that work? How do we make that and physically realize these spaces? Which is
right.
It's impressive they pulled it off, and then they also do a really kind of neat Easter egg thing with these what they call memoir spots, which are little locations throughout each level where you can sit down and Guybrush will do a little voiceover memoir of that scene. And it's basically, if you sit in that exact spot, it sort of replicates the 2-dimensional screen you would have seen in The Secret of Monkey Island.
I will say,
I love that.
I didn't like those. I liked I think that if there wasn't okay, to zoom out to Sea of Thieves mechanics a little bit. In Sea of Thieves, basically everything that you do will have commendations associated with it. Commendations are like little mini achievements in game. They'll get you sometimes an aesthetic thing for your pirate or for your ship or for whatever, or little amounts of coins or just a title, something. And I chose, of course I did, to go through Legend of Monkey Island and 100% every tall tale. Of course. And in some of the episodes, that is very easy. And in some of them, that really requires some scrounging around. In a way that, like, I gotta say, it's like the second half of doing it is not fun. Just looking around for every memoir spot.
I think it's especially hard in the last chapter because you're on this big, dense jungle.
Yeah.
It's really hard. And I don't remember every last spot from the original game on Monkey Island. So you really got to look around for them. But I think the ones on Melee Island are usually easier, except for like a couple of them.
Yeah, and I'll admit to not actually realizing that those memoir spots are in places where you can see the view of a screen from The Secret of Monkey Island until like the third tall tale. So I went through a lot of them just kind of looking around and guessing and checking.
It is cool when you know, though.
It is cool when you know. Yeah.
If you have that Monkey Island experience, then it makes it a lot easier.
Right, and not myself not having that Monkey Island experience. I don't remember any of the screens from that game. Like I don't
Right.
I didn't have that as like a tool to be like, all right, well, I remember the screens, so I can kind of figure out where I should stand to find this spot. And also I wrote a walkthrough, because that's my whole thing is I run the blog. So it was really hard to find some of these, and I agree with Mitchell that it's not necessarily fun. Sea of Thieves kind of does that, where they will make a challenge, and the challenge itself will be its own thing, but then they'll say, all right, we have this space, let's fill it with some hidden things to find, which is not a bad idea to do. I just don't necessarily think that their approach to hiding things is like all that engaging. If you have to find a hidden thing in, say, a collectathon or a sandbox game, a lot of times you have this very satisfying like bouncing thing in the physical space. So you're like, hey, that thing is gold and it rotates and bounces and there's a little sound effect.
Yeah.
And when I get close to it, I pick it up. And in Sea of Thieves, it's just like in the scenery. It's like a book on a table. And those, one, are harder to find, but two, they're not satisfying to quote unquote pick up. Even though you don't pick them up.
I'll say this about it. I think it's fun when you just like stumble upon one. Like if you're just walking around and you're like, oh, there's one.
Totally,
that's neat. And then it gets less fun when you're going out of your way to be like, where the hell is this last one?
Yeah, knowing that you have
sick of this. I don't want to be here.
Like, okay, so in the third Tall Tale specifically, there are 10 memoir spots, and 7 of them are in the main island before you like progress into the next part where it starts to be more funnily, and then the 8th one is right outside that entrance into the funnel, and then 2 of them are like in there and you don't even really know unless you're looking it up.
Yeah,
which I do recommend if you're a big person who couldn't stand to imagine going through this and not finding all the memoir spots, to check out Jeff's guide on the Golden Sands blog post. I will say I didn't need it for the memoir spots, but I did use it for the memoir spots just to make sure I wasn't skipping things.
Yeah, because, right, like you said, right before you enter that funnel, there's actually 2 more to go, and you have no way of knowing that. So you could be like, well, this is kind of a point of no return, but did I miss one? Did I miss 2? Like, there's nothing that communicates that, so...
well,
yeah.
The good thing about when I go through and try to find everything is usually, Jeff, you and I usually play it with our friends Hyle and Cameron on DK Vine's Stream of Thieves. Usually you guys just point them out. So, like, if I'm going through it for the first time, I usually don't sweat it. I just, like, find whatever I stumble upon. Because I know whenever we play it, you guys will just point them all out.
Yeah, I guess that's actually what I recommend. Just play with Jeff, and he'll tell you the answer to the puzzles.
He'll be like, okay, now go over here.
When I play it by myself, you know, especially because I have to, like, write the guide. So when I'm doing it, there is no guide. There's no one for me to look up yet.
Mm-hmm.
I have no North Star. And so I feel a little bit like a rugged explorer, but like in a not exciting way, like in a like in a this is really tough way. Like this is
a really pissed off Indiana Jones.
Like if you're exploring the jungle, it's not actually fun. There's mosquitoes, and you have to, like you have that big machete that you're chopping down vines. They make it
get tired.
They make it look exotic. It's not exotic. It's tiring. It's hard.
Your arm gets tired,
and
you're getting bit by animals.
When we play with Hyle, I view it more like I am a tour guide and Hyle is on a slightly guided tour. I still let him like connect dots and things, but I definitely am like it's more like if you had a guy
if it's
there,
missable stuff.
If you had a guy there that was making sure you didn't step on the poison ivy, that's what I do for you guys on the stream. It's just hey, you know, we're going to go through this and you're going to have fun, but I'm just going to make sure you don't step on the poison ivy because I already did and it hurt.
Yeah, there's some commendations that are really good. I'll say, but most of them are like just you'll know it is a commendation because you can see all of the commendations and what you need to do to achieve them at any point after starting the tall tale. So you're just waiting for a dog to need a bone because you see that you need to give a dog a bone at some point. And then you'll have that moment of like, dude, I have a bone for you. And just get really excited about it. It's a fun time. The second one had a really good one with Stan, the used boat salesman, and shipping him off in a wardrobe that he's just stuck in and pushing that wardrobe into the ocean and knowing that you're supposed to do that because it gets you an achievement. Good stuff.
And it paid off as like a gag in the ending of the third one. So
yeah,
I really did like that. That is in contention for one of the better parts of the whole thing. Yeah. Also, I know we might be kind of sequence breaking here, but you brought up the second one, and am I the only one who kind of felt like the second one was like the Halloween one? Does that make any sense?
Honestly, I'd say I got that vibe more from the third one.
Say more about it. Say more about your feelings.
So when I did it, so I'm running around doing it solo, obviously. You can play this. You can play this co-op with up to 4 players as a team, but that's a weird way to play a kind of puzzle point and click game, right?
Yeah, I will say that's a weakness of this because Sea of Thieves really is built around that crew structure of 4 people, where like you're always allowed to have less or even just one person, but with everything else in the game, pretty much you want to be in a crew because it just makes things easier. The challenges are sort of built around it. And this one is very not that way. I would recommend to anyone who wants to play this, do it alone first, maybe.
I think
especially for stuff like the insult sword fighting.
Yeah.
Yes. There are moments where it clearly is like it just works better as one. And I think that if you really want to play with friends, that's fine. And you will be able to have a good experience. But it is just a little weird. It's like a little funky. It almost slightly doesn't work, but it does work enough. You go through it and, you know, in a point and click game, you might discover an item and you don't yet know what to do with it.
Uh-huh.
And it's almost like when you enter an escape room at an escape room.
Yeah.
and
escape rooms are us, yes.
and everybody is doing different things, and you realize you have found the key to a thing, but someone else has found the lock to the thing, and if you're not communicating, you haven't, like, you don't know what you don't know, and that's like part of escape rooms, is that it's like you have to communicate and all this stuff. But like this, it feels a little less structured, and you can run into trouble where you're like, okay, I found an item and I'm running around here, but my friend ran over the other way and he triggered a thing, and I didn't even get to see what happened because he was doing that thing. And you kind of, it might not be the ideal way to play it.
Like I was playing with some friends last night, and we totally just missed that you're supposed to go to Guybrush first, and he'll have like dialogue for you there. We like went straight up to Herman Toothrot's place and made like the banana oil. Just had no idea that Guybrush was on the other side of the island with stuff he wanted to say. We didn't let him say it.
Yeah, I actually did the same thing. I went to the banana oil place first, and then talked to Guybrush.
In a way, I do like that. I like that you're not like stuck doing it in a linear structure. You, especially with this third one, you can just like go anywhere on the island, just do it in whatever order you see fit. But I think that's just how it be.
I think they could have maybe like where your ship first arrives to the island, if it had been kind of really close to where Guybrush was, and that is just like a natural way to like encourage, like put you right next to Guybrush, and you still could like ignore him if you wanted to, but like it would encourage you to go talk to him first. That might have worked better, because I agree it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't. It does tell you in the book that you can read.
Yeah, it tells you where he is, but
he's over here. Meet me at the Big Monkey Head, but you can just not. But so the reason that the second of the three is the Halloween one,
okay,
is so I'm playing it by myself.
Yes,
and it's the one where in the first tale you explore the town of Melee Island, like specifically just the buildings, and the people. But in the second tale, you're still on Melee Island, but you clear out this fog that allows you to get access to the backside of the island, which is this kind of thick, temperate forest. Is temperate the right kind of forest? I'm not a tree man, but this like northern style forest of evergreen trees or whatever. And it's obviously the whole tale is set at nighttime with the full moon. And you go to this forest, and you can, if you're in like the forest part of it, like if you enter through the little pathways, you can see like ghosts walking around, like ghost memories of Guybrush. And then you go and eventually you'll do insult sword fighting, where you have to fight ghost skeletons. And there's a part where there's like this beast, and this guy needs you to help like tame his beast because it escaped. And there's like bones, and like you walk around the back, and there's like a spooky shadow up in the cave. And you're like, that's the beast. And there's like all these human bones on the ground. And then, so all of these are scary. These are like slightly unsettling features. A forest at night with the full moon and the ghosts and the skeletons and the beast and the bones. Scary. And then there's a carnival. Scary. And then you talk to Stan, and Stan might be the scariest thing in Sea of Thieves. Because when you talk to him, he suddenly like locks onto you, and no matter where you walk, he follows while pointing.
He really sneaks up on you.
He's like pointing around in the air, and his like suit jacket has a texture on it that doesn't make sense to your brain. And
right.
You start wondering.
Right. The texture stays put when he moves the jacket.
Right. And so you start wondering if you're in the Twilight Zone, and it's. I think. And the
Are
thing
you
is,
okay?
I'm okay.
Okay.
I say all these things, but I actually love Halloween, so I loved this about it. But
yeah, I thought it was great.
I played it, and I was like, you know, I usually play the game with friends, but when I'm playing it to study it for the like create guides and stuff, I play by myself. And I was like, this is the first time I really feel kind of unsettled. There's some creepy forest action going on out here, and I wasn't like scared. I was just like unsettled. And then I played it with Heil, and we had a group of 4 of us. We're all joking and yoking, and I got the feeling he wasn't scared, like at all.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm gonna have to talk, because I will be on his podcast to talk about this eventually. And
What a
I
little
was like, when we
celebrity
talk
you
about
are.
it, is he gonna think that this was the Halloween one or not? Am I crazy?
Well, I can see how it would be. Like, for Mitchell and I, we know this island ain't shit. There's nothing scary on this island. It's
There's
goofball town.
literal
But for
skeletons.
someone who's... Yeah. But for someone who isn't, a Monkey Island pro, I can see it being kind of creepy with that, like, forest.
Yeah, I guess that's the difference between the tone of Sea of Thieves and Monkey Island, because on paper they're very similar. They both use a good amount of like Caribbean or Louisiana style, like hokum as their backbone for the supernatural stuff, and then also the sort of realistic-ish kind of golden age of piracy that actually happened in the Caribbean at that time, plus blending it with a fair bit of like fourth wall breaking comedy. But the way those two things trade on those values is very different. So Monkey Island will break the fourth wall, or at least like purposefully break immersion for the sake of a joke, in that you'll be walking around this like hundreds of years old setting with pirate stuff, like high piracy age stuff, and then you'll find a vending machine with root beer in it. Like, that's the kind of deal they're doing,
Right.
And then Sea of Thieves leans a little bit more authentic, but also a little bit more supernatural. So you have this interesting conflation here where Monkey Island is always very silly. But like they're using the iconography of, if you stop and think about it only, but like truly very scary-ish kinds of things. But then they just like deflate their own soccer ball on it. They just kind of mushmouth it. And in Sea of Thieves, you can actually feel those things again. So it's kind of like an awakening of some of the toothier parts of Monkey Island. Like the fact that, hey, we do have a setting that's just full of ghost skeletons, and Sea of Thieves has a combat system. In Monkey Island, even though those ghost skeletons would never do anything on purpose as the joke, in Sea of Thieves, you're gonna fight them because you have a sword. And that's it's like both sides of this thing never really had this thing happen until you got together. Like, I was thinking about, okay, so the way this whole story ends is a fight with LeChuck. And it uses some insult sword fighting from Monkey Island, but also some, like, genuine combat stuff from Sea of Thieves. And as I was doing it, I was thinking, wow, is this the first time I've fought LeChuck? Because there's fights with LeChuck
so.
in the Monkey Island series, but they're always, like, lure him over to this place, so, like, he tricks himself into using the environment against himself. Something like that.
They're just puzzles.
Yeah, they're puzzles. This is the first time you fight LeChuck. And it's kind of weird, but it fits. It still feels like LeChuck. It doesn't feel like sacrilege. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that you use the insult sword fighting against him, too. I forget, you do it a little bit in Return, but not much. Here it's like the main thing.
The insult sword
I think
fighting?
they locked onto it maybe as like a way to merge something that is authentic to Monkey Island with the more kinetic gameplay of Sea of Thieves with actual sword fighting.
Yeah.
So they're like, we can just graft this mechanic onto our regular sword fighting mechanics and
honestly,
marry the two.
Honestly, it's a lot more satisfying when you can pull off the right insult and then do actual, like, hitting with your sword and stuff.
Yeah, make them feel bad and then slice them down.
Yeah, and Sea of Thieves isn't like... It's not known for having a very deep combat system. But it is
No.
like it is kinetic and it is like physical. Like you are swiping as you hit the trigger and you're blocking and things, and there's a physicality to it, which is different than in the point and click games where you're just kind of mostly just hitting dialogue options and then like watching scenes play out.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing about Sea of Thieves is you forget it sometimes because it often doesn't feel this way. But the genre of game that it is first-person shooter. So the melee-style combat they have in the game is really just the same like level of slappers in GoldenEye or you know, whatever. Like if you get a sword in a Halo game or if you get a sword in a Call of Duty, where it's like, okay, this is your secondary. But in Monkey Island, in Legends of Monkey Island, it feels like it's designed to put the sword fighting first before any of the gun stuff. Like I don't think you can really do the LeChuck fight or any of the sword fighting fights with your gun. I don't think that does it. Because you're forced to block at certain points in order to get through the fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it works because obviously the thing about the mechanics of combat in Sea of Thieves is that they can be used in these on-rails story-based missions against AI threats, but the same exact mechanics can be used from one player fighting another player. So that is actually their primary use. Like that's what it was invented for.
Mm-hmm.
The game was designed to put players against players in sword fights and gun fights and ship fights. But then when they started adding in story, you know, and things, they made AI enemies. And I think that when you have this opportunity to tell this Monkey Island story, you have the opportunity to kind of like maybe pigeonhole the combat in that context to be what you want it to be. And so I agree with you that they kind of really made the sword fights take the forefront there, whereas maybe in average gameplay it's more balanced of using guns a lot and then bringing in the sword.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the really high-level, like, Twitch streamer players of Sea of Thieves, they always have two different kinds of guns, and no swords equipped.
Yeah.
Which is, I can't imagine playing that way. I always have to have a sword in order to feel like I can do something. Because you only have five ammo units for any gun that you're using.
Yeah, like I said, the combat in Sea of Thieves is not known to be incredibly deep. And then, so the difference between, like, average level play and high level play is so stark because most players don't go deep with it because there's not much of a curve to it. It's either you're, like, god level good at it or you're just, like, most people are just kind of casual about it. And, you only have 5 bullets, which means that you kind of have to favor the sword. Unless you're really good. I think that the insult sword fighting as a concept is not my favorite because of the at least the way it is in the second tale.
In the second tale,
it's never been one of my favorite things in the series.
The idea of it is that you have to fail, you have to lose sword fights so that you can learn new insults. And it's basically grinding. It's just a grind. Like you have to go through X amount of fights, and there's a little RNG to it, and then you can like use the insults and learn new insults, and it's fine. I didn't hate it by any means, but it's not the standout moment of that tale.
I feel like the first time I was going through 2, it was a lot more frustrating. I don't know what it was, but it just felt like it felt like it does in the actual Monkey Island games, where it just feels like, oh, I'm just getting screwed out of getting the right responses I need. But when we did it on the DK Vine stream, I felt like it went a lot smoother. It is better than it is in Monkey Island games, at least, since you get to do the actual slashing. But I thought it was good in the 3rd episode, since you don't have to do any of the grinding. The puzzle is finding out which of these responses fits LeChuck.
Yeah.
Right. You're already given the responses. You just have to choose the right one.
Yeah, that's a lot more satisfying.
The thing with this series is that I think they knew that early on. Because if you look at Monkey Island and Monkey Island 2 and Curse of Monkey Island, and Tails especially. And
Tails does it so well.
They keep changing up the form in which insult sword fighting takes, because they do bring it back basically every time. I don't know about Escape, but when they do it, they incorporate it in a different way. Everything, and I'll say this as another weakness, everything in Legend of Monkey Island within Sea of Thieves is a direct reference to the whole plot of Secret of Monkey Island, the first Monkey Island game. There's very little else from like Monkey Island 2 or Tales or Return that itself is not a Monkey Island 1 reference or Curse or anything like that. Like the plot of Secret of Monkey Island is you start at that like southern coast of the island where you're in the town, and you do a bunch of stuff in the town, and then you move to the back of the island, which is what you do in episode 2, and then you move to Monkey Island, which is what you do in the third act of the game, or in the third episode of this thing. And because they're so... like, it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun that it's a nostalgic tour of the original game. But the Monkey Island series is way bigger than that. So... feeling... I wonder if they felt that they had to do insult sword fighting in the same way as the original game, when the series itself has really grown past the grinding aspect of it all. You don't do that anymore in the later Monkey Island games, because I think it's understood that it's a different kind of game than an RPG. At the time, point-and-click adventure games, or like narrative adventure games, kind of were thought of as within the same world as RPGs. Just in that late 80s, early 90s, when we're kind of just figuring out what video games are still a little bit. You had the story things like Monkey Island or Final Fantasy, and then the action things like a Mario or football. And so this is really just a sort of a story-ish kind of thing in a time period when you had grinding in those, and it did not have to be in this. But it's also not as bad as it is in the original game either. It's mostly fun.
Yeah.
And I will say the thing that helps get you through it, like I think it is a grind, and it's not the strongest point in these tales. But, you know, you're unlocking funny insult, like, comebacks. Like, the writing, I think that's the thing that maybe with any of these games is when the gameplay is weak, you hope that at least the writing is good.
And it usually is.
And it usually is. It's like a bright spot to highlight, bring up maybe the weaker parts. So, yeah, the writing is great on that, and that at least helps it a little. And then at the end of Tale 2, or at the end of the insult sword fighting part of Tale 2, you do a slight twist on the insult sword fighting where you fight a boss.
Yeah.
And you have all the retorts that you have learned up to that point, but the boss will use different insults. So the puzzle is just figuring out which retorts you already know work as well for these new insults as they did for the old insults. So I can't think of an example, but it'll have been 2 different insults that have the same comeback that kind of snaps back at them. And that was kind of a fun puzzle that, again, it didn't require the grind because that part was over.
Yeah, and that's how they do it in the original game, too. Jeff, there's a really good one. I think, Dustin, we've talked about this. This is our favorite. In the 5th episode of Tales of Monkey Island, you're doing this like 3-way fight between it's Guybrush, Morgan Le Fay, who is she's a pirate hunter. She's like a Van Helsing of pirates. And then an undead guy who doesn't matter. And in that fight, you're trying to get Morgan to feel better about herself while also just fighting this other guy for real. So based on what they both say, you need to pick something, and there's no collection, so you just pick out of like a few things that you have. You need to pick something that somehow refers to what she said and makes her feel better about herself, and refers to what he said and makes him feel worse about himself with one sentence.
It's such a clever way to do it.
Really cool.
No grinding.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really good.
Yeah, maybe you should play again. I want to talk about the storyline of Sea of Thieves leading up to this arc. And Jeff, we might need some help here.
Okay.
Yeah, because it turns out, it didn't really feel that way at the time, but it turns out that what was happening in the the weekly adventures and some of the mysteries that were going on in Sea of Thieves, they were leading toward this story moment where there was a version of the Pirate Lord who is like the most benevolent sort of ruler of the Sea of Thieves, but he's not really in charge. He's just kind of like a figurehead. Everyone loves the Pirate Lord.
He basically stands for making sure nobody's in charge.
Yeah.
And that, like, everyone gets to kind of be in a free, equal, like, pirate paradise, sort of. Where no evildoers get to come in and just be like, well, I'm the strongest pirate, so I get to kill and enslave everyone. And he's like, no, we all pirates. We got to make sure that we all get to still be pirates or whatever.
Yeah.
So leading
Namaste.
Up in the months leading up to this arc, it looked like he was doing some bad stuff. Which I don't know all the things that he did, but it looked like Ramsey, the Pirate Lord, was responsible for some really out of character things.
Yeah, so it's really, honestly, not as involved as you might think. There really was basically 1 month of that really tied into it, and again, if you miss that, you miss that. That you can't experience that. But I don't think that it will stop you from enjoying the Monkey Island Tall Tales. I don't think it's context. It's not context that you absolutely need. But
Right.
just so you have that context, there was an adventure, and an adventure is a limited time story that is going on that has some gameplay challenges you can do that also progress the story of the game. And that was it for a limited time event. That's gone now. But there was an adventure where the Pirate Lord seemingly sends you on a quest that culminates in you breaking into a sort of a vault where dangerous artifacts and important Sea of Thieves artifacts from previous moments in the story are stored. And it culminates in this Pirate Lord revealing themselves to have been an imposter the entire time, and you helped them break in so they could steal a magical sword that's called the
Burning
Sword
Blade.
of Souls.
Okay.
It's originally called the Sword of Souls.
Sword of Souls. Sorry.
And which was the sword that was given to Arthur Pendragon. And
From
Arthur
the
Pendragon,
1983 video game Carnath.
It's insane. It's so cool.
Yeah.
right, from Black Witch and all these Commodore 64 games that the predecessor company that became Rare made, and then Rare, making Sea of Thieves 30 years later, put this character from these 1980s Commodore 64 games in Sea of Thieves and made him a main character.
Yeah,
So
it
Arthur
kind
Pendragon,
of like in a really big way too. Not even just in a little crossover. It like almost retroactively makes Sea of Thieves a long gapped sequel to or spin-off maybe of these Commodore 64 games from 30 years
awesome.
ago.
right? I can't remember all of them. There's Black Witch, Entombed, the
I believe the
Staff
first
of
one is the
Carnath.
Staff of Carnath.
Staff of Carnath. So I think there was 5 of them, maybe 4.
I think 4.
And Sea of Thieves is like the long-awaited 5th sequel of the Arthur Pendragon video games.
Yeah.
But anyways, so he was a main character. There was an event in the game where players across the globe had to kind of choose a side and cause one of 2 things to happen. And what ended up being the fallout of that is that Arthur Pendragon's soul was bound, and basically he's trapped in an eternal sort of damnation. And he had this Sword of Souls, which was a magical artifact that allowed him to release bound souls. So it's kind of ironic that his soul eventually gets bound. But yeah, the sword basically got cursed in the process of this ritual that it backfired on him. And now the sword is a dangerous artifact that is now called the Burning Blade because it's been imbued with Captain Flameheart's energies, and Captain Flameheart is a bad guy in Sea of Thieves. So, long story short, somebody impersonated the Pirate Lord to try and break into the Pirate Lord's secret, like, garage and, like, steal his really cursed lawnmower or something. And you helped him. You helped him break in, and then you found out that wasn't really the Pirate Lord, and it kind of leaves on a little cliffhanger where you're like, I don't know who it was, but it wasn't the good guys. And then these tall tales start up, and you realize at the end of the first one that it was, in fact, LeChuck who was impersonating the Pirate
my
Lord.
Goodness.
Yeah. Plot twist.
Yeah. It's interesting that, like, way before it was even announced that there would be this Monkey Island crossover, there's this character going around Sea of Thieves doing stuff that is LeChuck. Very weird.
It reminds me because they did the Pirates of the Caribbean one 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And that was revealed at E3 in 2021. 21, yeah. And it was 21. It was revealed at E3, and it was revealed that it was also going to release in like 2 weeks. It was like a very surprise, like, we're doing this, and it's coming out in 2 weeks. And that was surprising because Sea of Thieves usually never did anything like that. They have like an insider beta test program that their fans can take part in, and usually there's nothing that is a surprise because you can test things before they come out. But that one didn't get to be tested by people. That one was kept a secret, and it was never leaked. But what was interesting with that is that for over 6 months, they had a plot thread involving this character, Duke, who was one of the bilge rats, who are these adventurous type pirates. And he was kind of going down this dark path to become sort of a bad guy. And it was this ongoing plot thread about, like, ships were getting stolen by sirens, evil mermaids, and Duke was investigating it. And then you find out that the entire thing was absolutely just integrally building up to a Pirates of the Caribbean story.
Yeah.
For 6 months, you couldn't tell that was what it was about.
Sea of Thieves does its crossovers in a very embedded way, as opposed to something like Smash Brothers or, like, I guess Fortnite nowadays. Yeah.
Just something you can easily shrug off.
Yeah. Like with Smash Brothers, if you're trying to figure out the Legend of Zelda timeline, which is an oft considered pastime of Zelda fans for the last 30 years, you don't include Smash Brothers, and you certainly don't include, like, all of the other series that are connected to it via Smash Brothers. That it doesn't make sense to do, really. It's so much. You can still, if you want, I think you could consider Smash Brothers as part of it, but, like, you would never say, oh, and that means also it's Splatoon's in there. It's a lot. With Sea of Thieves, it is so clearly, like, part of the story, both long before and long after these tall tales happened, that, like, yeah, dude, Pirates of the Caribbean is in this world. They are in some sort of multiverse. Or with Monkey Island, I don't even think it's a multiverse. It's kind of just, like, in it.
Yeah. It's sort of just implied that it's in the same Caribbean.
Yeah.
As the Sea of Thieves. Yeah.
Yeah. There was a moment when I was starting up Tale 3 when I had decked my ship out in a ship customization set called Bear and Bird, which is a Banjo-Kazooie inspired set. But also, like, another thing that Sea of Thieves is like, it's lightly in the same universe of specific other Rare games that they've put out in the past. We talked about the Pendragon stuff, but like that's just the most notable. It's also in the same universe as Banjo-Kazooie, like it is. And it has prophecies about what will happen later that you can find in various parts of the game. So I'm in my like official Banjo-Kazooie ship set that makes the game kind of canon with Banjo-Kazooie. And then I'm approaching Monkey Island from the Monkey Island franchise to go find a group of pirates who have stolen the Black Pearl from Pirates of the Caribbean, on which one of those pirates' jacket is a button that says "Ask me about Loom." Like somehow it's implied that this pirate actually did play the 1990 computer game Loom, and also the Burning Blade is in this episode later, and it's got Pendragon associated with it, so that's like 4 other games. It's the weirdest crossover ever, because none of these things are like, well, some of these things are huge, like the Pirates of the Caribbean series is huge,
right,
like Monkey Island is huge within the space it's in. Banjo-Kazooie is huge within the space it's in. Sea of Thieves is a pretty big game, but like also it's just like a weird collection of things that are only related to each other because they make sense to be thematically and are full canon with each other and are not just like, this is a weird crossover that you can ignore. It's like full in there.
It's
like it's important to what's going on.
It's sort of an omniquill. It's like it's a sequel to some things. It's a midquill to Monkey Island. It's a prequel to many things. And the things that are all tied together, many of them are semi-niche things.
Yeah.
And you know, to me, it makes sense for like Pirates of the Caribbean and Monkey Island and Sea of Thieves to all cross over in ways because of like the way that like the progression of fantasy pirate fiction, everything is curbed from everything. Like the Monkey Island game was based a lot on that book on Stranger Tides, but it's also heavily inspired by the Pirates of the Caribbean Disney ride. But then the Pirates of the Caribbean movie, Curse of the Black Pearl, was heavily inspired by Monkey Island.
Yeah.
So it's like a tail eating the snake, or the snake eating the tail. And then like,
I like it the other way.
Sea of Thieves has its own lore that it invented that was clearly cribbed from Pirates of the Caribbean. Like the idea of the cursed Aztec gold that turns the crew of the Black Pearl into like zombies. That is just the basis for the Sea of Thieves lore of cursed gold that creates the skeletons. And then they actually crossed over with Sea of Thieves. So like the thing that inspired them then was in it and sharing like a space. And then Monkey Island gets in it. And there's this character in Sea of Thieves lore that is the most ominous, mysterious character nobody knows anything about. And it has been teased all the way back in a book that released in 2016, 2 years before the game came out, in this book called Tales from the Sea of Thieves. And they tease the existence of a character that's just called the Captain.
Captain.
And
really?
Or the Captain. Yeah, Captain or Captain. They've used it both ways.
Have they? Okay. And I'm sorry for my non-correct.
No, you're right. But Captain is how he originally was, and it's gone both ways, and it still goes back and forth. But they reference this Captain again in the Pirates of the Caribbean story, where he was like the boss of Davy Jones from Pirates of the Caribbean. Like Davy Jones comes in and is like, I'm gonna be a bad guy in this new world, and the captain is the guy who invited him. The captain was like, hey, I'm gonna send you an artifact that lets you travel from your multiverse, your universe to my universe, because I'm like the omni-pirate bad guy, and nobody still knows who he is. And leading into this Legend of Monkey Island tall tale set, there were some people speculating that maybe the captain is LeChuck.
Mm-hmm. And
that did not come to pass. So I'm still sitting here not knowing, like, what is the truth? Like, when will it be revealed? And I have been convinced for a while that it is just Captain Hook.
I was also thinking for a while that it's Captain Hook.
Like, they have not referenced Captain Hook like the way that they referenced Monkey Island before they did a Monkey Island crossover. They have referenced the Goonies in the canon.
Yeah,
they've done a lot of references to the Goonies.
Yeah,
so.
Goonies is also connected in Sea of Thieves in a way that is like more than a crossover.
Right, they just say that One-Eyed Willie on the Inferno actually sailed the Sea of Thieves, like in pirate times. I'm like, guys, all of the pirates, all of them? But no,
it's just all one.
They haven't referenced Captain Hook directly yet, but I think the captain will be Captain Hook, and that will be bringing it all full circle. Obviously, the original pirate fiction of all pirate fictions is Treasure Island, and Treasure Island is in canon with Peter Pan and Captain Hook. Treasure Island, the novel, the book, the original, references Peter Pan because those books were coming out at the same time, and both those authors were friends. And Peter Pan references Treasure Island. Those books are in the same universe. It's pretty crazy stuff. Basically, all of pirate fiction for the past 200 years is just built on what came before in ways that kind of connect to each other. It's wild.
Yeah, and then Sea of Thieves is kind of cashing that check finally of like, okay, let's see how that goes. If they do all kind of come together.
What is this podcast about?
Yeah, it's about, pirates. It's about pirates, actually.
It's about pirates.
Yeah. So, okay, so that's the setup. We've got LeChuck impersonating Ramsey the Pirate Lord, and he wants to basically take over the Sea of Thieves. LeChuck is also, it's worth noting, the first character in Sea of Thieves that is evil in a way that is cartoonish, because he's everyone else has like goals, you know. They're like realistic people with we've seen the Gold Hoarder, who is not evil. The Gold Hoarder is gold hungry, and Gold Hoarder is cursed to want gold. And we've seen Flameheart, who is probably the like closest thing we've had to evil incarnate in the Sea of Thieves, but still he's a politician. Like he's got an idea for what he wants to happen, which is why he's doing what he's doing. LeChuck really just is kind of a bad guy, which has always been fun. He's Bowser. Yeah, really, he's just Bowser.
LeChuck's probably my like favorite villain in anything ever. I like that they're able to straddle the line between making him like an actual threat and making him just a goofy asshole. Yeah. Like, he uses the word nincompoops in the last episode.
He does.
No, like, scary, like, actual villain with motivations that should be taken seriously would ever say that.
Yeah, if Flameheart said nincompoop, I think, like, he's done. He's just...
You a nincompoop.
Yeah, he would no longer have a following.
He poofs into a cloud of smoke like, even more than he is already mostly a cloud of smoke. And just disintegrates into the Sea of Thieves because he said the wrong word that made him not cool.
That's going on YouTube, bro.
Dude, kind of cringe.
LeChuck. Yeah. So it's interesting you bring that up, LeChuck, and kind of the tonal element of that, because there's a lot of things that I was very curious, how were they going to mesh bringing that thing from Monkey Island into Sea of Thieves in a way that I just didn't think Sea of Thieves could do that thing. Like you mentioned earlier, the kind of jokes where it's clearly set in the 1700s, but then there's a vending machine with root beer. Yeah. And I'm like, ooh.
Sea of Thieves would not have done
work
that.
In
Sea
of Thieves? Yeah. And
what they do is very clever.
I think they do a good job of maintaining the jokes while, what's the word for it? They like kind of retrograde
reinterpreting it.
Yeah, they reinterpret it and retro everything in a way that like makes it believably constructed by like pirates.
Yeah, it's also sort of a walled garden in this Monkey Island area, because like the story of it is that Guybrush found his way here, and then I guess died at some point, and ended up in the Sea of the Damned. Which is a long-established Sea of Thieves thing that they kind of used at first as rationale for how MMOs work, where like if your character dies, they have to come back to life.
Well, did Guybrush die, or did he go through a portal?
Guybrush didn't die. I think that Guybrush and Elaine, while sailing on their honeymoon, accidentally sail through a portal and end up in the Sea of the Damned, which is what your pirates do when they start the tale. They sail through a portal. They don't die.
Yeah, they do it on purpose, though.
Right. Yeah, but it happened to... Yeah, and then LeChuck kind of follows him. The same thing happened to the crew of the Cursed Captain who sailed into the Sea of Thieves in the first Pirates of the Caribbean tall tale, A Pirate's Life.
Mm-hmm.
They don't die to get into the Sea of the Damned. They just end up in a storm that takes them through a portal. And then, while in the Sea of the Damned, some of them got some cursed gold and turned to skeletons, and the rest of them eventually died, actually, and turned to ghosts. So some of them are skeletons and some of them... Anyway, this is not important.
Well, no, I think it is important, because the Sea of the Damned is kind of like a pocket dimension within Sea of Thieves, which itself is almost a pocket dimension within the larger world around it. In the Sea of the Damned, the way it works is that when you die, when your character dies, it is the story that your character has been deemed worthy by a mysterious figure known as the Ferryman, who sails the Sea of the Damned and shepherds souls back into the living. So you just need to wait on the Ferryman's ship for a few seconds, and then you can walk through a portal on his ship back into the Sea of Thieves. Not every soul has that affordance, though. And so Guybrush gets stuck in the Sea of the Damned, and a feature of the Sea of the Damned is that the longer you stay there, the more your memories and just the aspects of your life that have filled you up to the point that you are, like, have made you who you are, they start spreading out, and they manifest physically around you, which is why we're able to get a version of Melee Island is found in the Sea of the Damned. And that's right. The Melee Island that we're on. We're not actually on the real Melee Island.
Right. It's like you're walking physically through a dream of Guybrush. That's what the Sea of the Damned does. It brings your memories to life as real places. And then LeChuck, using the magic of the Burning Blade, sort of uses this to create a prison for Guybrush, where all of the manifestations there are making Guybrush sort of live out a fantasy that he is incapable of waking up from.
Yeah, so that's the premise, and out of everyone else that is involved in this, so Guybrush and Elaine... But by the way, okay, here's the thing about Return to Monkey Island. In Return to Monkey Island, the game that came out last year, there's a scrapbook that you get at the end after finishing the game that you can just read through, and you can see, like, Elaine and Guybrush's life together. They've made a little scrapbook book.
Well, you have it at the beginning of the game, but if you play it after you beat it, it fills up with the stuff from that game.
Sure, right. Sorry, you're right. It's there the whole time, but it's just a way to get caught up with the story.
Yeah.
And if you click on an object in the book, it'll have a couple lines from Guybrush just saying what it is and why it was important. And there's one bit at the end of the page on Curse of Monkey Island that is, I think, like a wedding ribbon of some sort, that if you click it, Guybrush says, yeah, and then after that we went on our honeymoon, and I guess that's a story for another time. So, like, even in that game, I don't know if they were, like, trying to specifically set up this Sea of Thieves thing, which it would have been talked about already at the time of release of Return, so it's possible. But it just does such a good job of, like, being referenced within Sea of Thieves in and of itself, and also within the Monkey Island series. It really is something that happened to Guybrush. So Guybrush and Elaine...
It's worth pointing out that when the Pirates of the Caribbean tale came out in 2021, they already referenced Monkey Island and that Guybrush went to Sea of Thieves on his honeymoon.
Mm-hmm.
So it may have been the case that during the development of Return that they were referencing that, or that they were already, like, talking about the Legend of Monkey Island Tall Tales. But yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, even just back in the original games, Curse ends with them, like, sailing away to a honeymoon, and they don't say where they're going. And Escape starts talking about, like, yeah, so we had this honeymoon, but yeah. So, like, even way back then, the idea of this honeymoon maybe being an adventure you didn't see was kind of long established. So it's cool for it to have come in this really weird form later on. So Guybrush and Elaine go through. LeChuck sort of follows them. Also following is Kate Capsize, who is almost a throwaway character from Monkey Island 2. just like someone that you kind of screw over in a puzzle.
I'm surprised it took so long to bring her back.
Yeah, she's a very fun character in Monkey Island 2, but she really is just someone who has this ship that you need, and you like swindle her out of it and also end up putting her in jail in the process.
Yeah.
So then in this, she, because she's not on LeChuck's radar, I guess, actually makes it to the Sea of Thieves and invites you to go screw with Guybrush because he owes her a ship still. And so like she's really the impetus for how you get there and what you do there. So yeah, that's a cool aspect of it too. The story itself, we've kind of been like talking about the story, if you know what I mean. The story itself, there's really not much to it. Guybrush is stuck in this dream, and the character who is formerly known as the Voodoo Lady and now is known only as Karina, her new official name that she has supposedly always had but was never stated until Return. She helps you concoct a little potion to wake him up. Once he's woken up, it's determined that so you're on Melee Island right now. What you really need to go is to Monkey Island, and that's where LeChuck's lair is, so you can find LeChuck and just ruin his life again. So right, and that's what you do. That's the whole story.
Guybrush thinks he needs to rescue Elaine, and I think it turns out to be the case that Elaine kind of rescues Guybrush with Kate Capsize.
Always the case.
Yeah, that's usually how it goes.
Yeah. And then LeChuck's plan, ultimately, after you've thwarted his little imprisonment of Guybrush, is that he can use the Burning Blade's power to subject people to his will and kind of force Elaine to marry him. Mm-hmm. But, of course, you, being the good guy, end up stopping that from happening.
Right, and that is basically the story. That's the long and the short of it. What happens to the sword, the Burning Blade at the very end?
The Pirate Lord takes it away, which is kind of just what they always do in Sea of Thieves. Like, all right, big powerful artifact. It's going to be like the impetus of the story and the center point. And at the end, he's like, I'll go take this away for safekeeping. It's too dangerous for pirates to blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And it's like,
I guess,
dude, we already broke into your garage and stole it once. What do you think? I can't do it again? Like, anyway, but it's just kind of what happens. But yeah, the Pirate Lord, it's interesting because you mentioned how they had built up to this with stories that you didn't know that the stories that were building up were building up to this. But in spite of that, overall, this is still incredibly self-contained.
Yes.
And much more so than the Pirates of the Caribbean story was. I think that one had much more lasting impact on the Sea of Thieves world and story. And this one you could kind of ignore, and you wouldn't miss anything about the Sea of Thieves story.
Yeah, what's interesting with that is, like, the Pirates of the Caribbean stuff in that arc was all about, like, it's a Sea of Thieves story, but we're using these characters and these settings and these, like, ideas to further that Sea of Thieves story. This just is a Monkey Island game that they put in Sea of Thieves, and I don't understand the, like, economics of that, to decide that's, like, a financially stable thing to do. But cool, man. That's awesome. That's wild.
Yeah, I love it.
As a longtime Sea of Thieves fan, Jeff, and a not longtime Monkey Island fan, maybe you don't have much of an emotional connection to Monkey Island. How do you feel about that? That there's just a Monkey Island game in there? Like, what's your take?
I enjoy it. I enjoyed it like tremendously, like as just an activity, but I don't have a strong emotional reaction to it. I think that I was, in terms of the overall story and things, I was a lot more invested in the Pirates of the Caribbean one. Not because I'm more invested in Pirates of the Caribbean, but because the story they were telling was more integral to Sea of Thieves itself. And it also had, I think, more of an emotional resonance. Like, this one is a bit more of just a comedy.
Yeah.
And that one was like, with Pirates of the Caribbean, you can be a little bit, like, straight-faced and dramatic and have just, like, rousing speeches about standing up to tyranny and stuff. And that maybe just doesn't fit the tone of the Monkey Island thing. But I felt like, you know, that the Pirates of the Caribbean one almost brought me to tears at a time or two. And this one doesn't do anything like that, which is not a bad thing. But it's definitely, it just doesn't stick with me in the same way. It's like, it just was a fun thing to do, and it makes me want more gameplay experiences like it.
Yeah.
But nothing really from a story perspective mattered to me, or will continue to matter. And it also just, it gives me this feeling of, like, as a Sea of Thieves fan, like, why can't they have a big splashy story expansion like this that isn't attached to somebody else's IP? That, like, they could at E3 drop a trailer that's like, the new big story in Sea of Thieves. It's about Sea of Thieves, and it is in the Sea of Thieves, and all the characters are Sea of Thieves.
What a concept.
It's like, no, every time they do this, they're like, oh, it's an IP crossover. It's somebody else's story. And I'm like, that's cool, and I enjoy it. But, like, I want that for Captain Flameheart, you know, and I want that for the Pirate Lord and the characters of Sea of Thieves to have their moments.
Yeah, I bet they will do it, or at least something like that, whenever they want to bring in who the captain is, provided it's not Captain Hook.
Right.
I mean, because the other option might be Captain Black Eye, which is another rare character.
That would be great, yeah.
Yeah, I really would like it
fun.
to be Captain Black Eye, please. I don't think it will be, though.
Please.
Because I think Captain Black Eye is referenced in that same book that
referenced
Captain
a few
is referenced in, so I don't think they would be the same character.
Yeah, it might not be.
Yeah, in any case, whenever they do that, I bet there'll be something. For now, like, it's interesting that you say that because it's just such a comedy, they don't really end in an emotionally resonant place, because I think that's true in what it is. But if you look at the Sea of Thieves series, like the ending of Tales or the ending of Return are so wildly emotionally resonant.
They're so good.
And then this one is like, just because of where it is in the timeline, you need to start with Elaine and Guybrush married and LeChuck on the down low, and then end that way too. Like, nothing can really change that much for them. And
well, not only that, but it's mostly based on the first game, which is just a straight comedy. You're not going to get any big emotional moments out of it.
Yeah, it takes a while for the series to kind of ramp up to where, especially the end of Return, like, just what that's doing is
so good.
I do get the feeling that this is like the team at Rare, the team at Sea of Thieves, obviously like Monkey Island, but it might be the case that, like, as fans of Monkey Island, they are fans of The Secret of Monkey Island, which is kind of the big one. And then, like, if you've played all the sequels, you're probably in a minority among a minority.
I believe that's the case. Yeah, well, at least Monkey Island, like 1 and 2, because then everything after that was, like, so much later than it and so much different than those two things.
Yeah, made by different people.
Made by different people.
Like
a
lot of the time.
The point in time when Monkey Island made the cultural impact that Monkey Island has is really that original one or two. And it's like, there's been more since then, but those were after Monkey Island was, had the impact of Monkey Island.
Well, maybe. I don't know. Because, like, the Monkey Island series is a lot like the Earthbound series. Or, I guess, just the game Earthbound. In that it's quite well known now. And it has clearly gotten this cult favorite status to it, where people in the world of video games really, really love it. But like at the time it came out, I think they said it publicly, like within its first few weeks, Monkey Island sold like 40,000 copies. Less, like we're in the 5 digits of copies that game sold in the time it was relevant. And then just it's a rolling thing. So eventually
I think
people talk to each other enough, because just the number of people who gamed on computers in 1990 was so low.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I think, too, the fact that Monkey Island is a LucasArts property, like, it's in the realm, kind of, in this little world that includes Star Wars and Indiana Jones, and it's a really niche thing, but it's in that wheelhouse. And you had, like, Lucasfilm really wanted to make a Monkey Island movie. Like, that's something that almost happened. And, like, eventually Pirates of the Caribbean as a movie happened, that it was, like, kind of a lot of the same people involved were pushing these different movies and stuff. So it's like it could have had a bigger impact if that had gone through. But it's clearly that the people involved who, like, owned Monkey Island, they held it in a high regard, even though it wasn't Star Wars, you know, it wasn't.
Yeah.
Right.
Everyone who knew it loved it. Like if you played it, you were immediately made aware, especially just compared to what was around at the time. This is something special. It is different. It is big. It should be considered in the same breath as like any game series that we're considering classics right now. But you know, it's simply not going to be at the rate of install that it has compared to something else at the time, like Mario or Zelda or some of those early RPGs like Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy, especially in a country like America, who does not at this point like story-based games that much compared to Japan. And Japan wasn't getting, I don't think they got Monkey Island. They got Maniac Mansion, by the way. They got Maniac Mansion on Nintendo, which is weird.
And it sounds scary.
It is a little
Happy Halloween, everybody.
I think it is scarier. Maniac Mansion is actually kind of horrifying because they hadn't leaned into the idea that the games should be safe yet. like point and
you
click
can
adventure.
just straight up like die and lose.
Yeah, you can straight up die and lose in the pre Monkey Island ones. So like while you're just kind of slowly going around a house doing the point and click stuff, there's like a weird mutant scientist who can just find you and eat you, and you need to run away. Pretty scary game actually. So Japan did get that, but I don't know if they got Monkey Island at the time. Do you think Monkey Island now, with this recent but small boom that it's gotten with Return last year, where it was talked about by like a number of people, and this expansion now, do you think it's kind of there now? Like, is it finally mainstream to talk about Monkey Island?
I don't know if I would go that far. I
don't know.
I think that either. Monkey Island is a thing that among gamers, you probably, like, if you're talking to gamers that talk about games, you're probably not going to find people who don't at least know it exists.
Know the
very
name,
often,
maybe, yeah.
Like they know the name, but it's still. I think that it really is an underdog type game. It is this sort of niche. Like the following is strong but small, and it's got this reputation as a, like that that sort of connoisseurs niche gem of a game that, like, I don't know if I would ever call it mainstream.
Yeah, it needs what Earthbound got with Ness being in every Smash Brothers or something. Like it's just got to get that one little push forward. I don't know if Sea of Thieves is quite Smash Brothers enough, but it's certainly big. So that'll be like a whole MMO's worth of people now at least know about Monkey Island.
It is kind of interesting to see the team at Rare do a Pirates of the Caribbean crossover with Disney, which is like blowing your load. It's like it's like we did Star Wars, like we did Pirates of the Caribbean, and then they're like, all right, we got our foot in the door now. We have a relationship.
Now
with
we
Disney. Now let us.
We can
have
work our way
schlop.
up to the real
Right.
series.
Yeah, I correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the last thing Rare did as a company that does like licensed games in any way at all was like Mickey's Speedway on the N64.
I think so.
Yeah, and then nothing until Pirates of the Caribbean, which is just like, okay, well, Pirates of the Caribbean is huge and it fits into Sea of Thieves pretty well, so that makes sense. But now Monkey Island, which is like, okay, that's crazy. You're going back to a 1990s video game, and Rare, the company that made Donkey Kong Country and Killer Instinct and Banjo-Kazooie and Perfect Dark, the 1990s video game they're going back to is Monkey Island. That's kind of mind-blowing in and of itself.
Yeah. So I looked it up. Monkey Island did get released in Japan, but for the Sega CD in 1993.
Oh, it might as well not have come out there.
Yeah.
Well, Jeff, I think that we're pretty far into a show right now, so I think it might be time to wrap it up, unless you have any final thoughts before we head into our segments.
I don't have any final thoughts. I did think that the rotating zombie head,
yes,
was an interesting thing, because I think that adapting it to Sea of Thieves, they might have had to tone down maybe it a little, but it still seems like maybe the most gruesome thing in Sea of Thieves.
This
I think
like
so.
still alive shrunken head.
Right, like Sea of Thieves is full of the undead in terms of skeletons, but there's never been like flesh. Like there's never done anything that's in between a body and a skeleton, and this thing is like a zombie. I don't know.
If I can put our friend Chris Alcock on the spot real quick, I asked him one time, and I hope that he doesn't mind me saying this because it's truly the worst thing I've ever heard. I asked him one time why skeleton lords in the Sea of Thieves, who once were people, like normal sized people, they might be like pretty tall for who they were, but they were tall within regular human height, right? Why are they like 8 feet tall as skeleton lords? And he told me the meat goes in the bones.
They absorb. Yeah.
I hate it so much. It sucks, and I wish I wasn't his friend.
I mean, that's where all the vitamins are. You gotta eat the bones.
That's true.
Yeah.
You gotta get to the juice.
So, yeah, the meat doesn't slough off. It goes in the bones. Something to think about. Something to think about. Okay, let's head into our segments. We got 2 today. Our first is our weekly guy. Let's just do the whole Legend of Monkey Island arc as a whole, rather than every individual
just across
telltale.
all 3.
Yeah. Who is your
Good
favorite
thinking.
guy? We'll start with Dustin.
Ooh, me first,
Yep.
huh? I'm gonna give it to LeChuck.
Ooh.
Not that I think he like particularly does anything super amazing over the course of these 3 tales, but he's just like my favorite villain. I like this guy a lot. One thing I brought it up earlier when we were playing is so the person who originally voiced LeChuck, Earl Bowen, passed away a while ago. And so now Jess Harnell is playing him. And I really like that he's not like trying to just be Earl Bowen again. He is like doing his own take on it, which is fun. I like that. And he just has like such a great design here. LeChuck's design fluctuates so much over the course of the series. And like, I think he always looks good. For the most part, but like this one is a very solid. It's kind of like in between his skeleton design and more fleshy zombie design of later.
Yeah, it's like bones, but they're green.
Yeah, exactly. It's a fun kind of middle of the road, and I just love any time they have like the dead bird for the feathers in his hat.
That's great.
That's such a cool.
I don't know if we've seen LeChuck before, rendered in this level of like 3-dimensional detail.
There are 2 3D Monkey Island games.
Right.
So but I mean they were like years before.
Emphasis on the word detail, I guess.
Yeah.
I think that this might be the best LeChuck has ever looked. Again, speaking as someone who's not as big of a fan as you guys are.
I think I would say that too.
I like the Tails LeChuck a lot, which is sort of similar. It's a little more cartoony than this. Like a little more rounded, because Sea of Thieves has these like sort of curved angles all over the place in the art style. It doesn't have those. But yeah, it's up there. It's pretty good. It kind of just looks like LeChuck has found. It's weird because like it started where in the first game he's a ghost. In the second game he is a zombie. In the third game he's a demon, and then after that point he's just a bunch of other stuff as the need arises. But he, over the last few installments, has really settled into at least a take on that second game, LeChuck, the zombie one. And I kind of don't know how I feel about that. I kind of wish they, like, I want to see a mummy LeChuck, or I want to see a space alien LeChuck. Like, keep doing them. Keep doing the weird monsters rather than settling in on one thing and making it kind of a standardized
he
look.
could be like a vampire. He could be a Frankenstein.
He could be a Frankenstein. He could be a werewolf. He could be a
a Seaman.
He could be an invisible man.
He could be invisible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that I would kind of agree with that take of wanting him to change up, but I also see how this game isn't the place to do it, because this is very much more just a send up of like the original and sort of just trying to be like it's not trying to reinvent the series at all.
Yeah, but even then, this is not the one from the original. Definitely. This is the one from 2. So it's an interesting thing there, because the Ghost LeChuck really is only in the original, and then they don't do a Ghost LeChuck that much anymore after that.
That's fine. That's probably my least favorite.
It is a very standard, but boring looking kind of LeChuck. Yeah, they don't do much with the form until that like reanimated. But
I get it for something like this. Like if I get it for something like this though. I get wanting to, if you're doing like a big crossover event, it makes sense that you might want to go with the more iconic look for the character rather than like doing your own. Like, I'd love to see what Rare would do with like, okay, we can change LeChuck any way we want. What do we do? That would be cool to see. But I get for like an event, you go for the one that people want to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So LeChuck is a great choice. Jeff, what's yours?
Mine is a cheat because it's 2 guys and they're called the Fettuccine Brothers.
Good choice. Yeah.
Excellent choice.
Yeah, these guys are great. I was really nervous about like how are they gonna put a circus carnival tent in Sea of Thieves and it not feel just like so out of place. And I remember like the first Tall Tale, they're the first of these. You don't get to go to the carnival yet. You're only on the town side of the island of Melee Island. And you don't get to go to the other side. But when you climb up the Lookout Mountain, you can look down and see it.
Mm-hmm.
And like if you try to go that way, there's like an impenetrable fog that will just reset you back. And we were talking about like that's like the spooky clown zone.
Yeah,
you don't go in there.
You don't go to the
foggy clown zone. That's
no. Yeah, and like, but then you get there, and they're not just circuses; they're Italian.
Yeah,
which is
it's like the head on a hat almost, but yes,
right. It's like when you're creating a character in like an RPG, like a tabletop, and you like roll some dice to just get some traits. You know, it's like you have a matrix, and you're just like, all right, roll 3 dice, and it's like, okay, pirate, circus, Italian, cool.
Yeah, brothers, twins.
The whole trifecta is
covered.
That's a full character creator right there. They're really good. It's
fun.
This choice.
They squabble with each other about like they've promised a prize money of like 10,000 pieces of silver or whatever, and then they're like squabbling because they don't actually have that much money. And then like you complete their challenge and they like talk it down and like, but there's like a cleaning fee for the uniform and there's insurance and there's all these fees, and then they like talk it down. I don't know. They're just funny. I like them because they're funny.
Yeah, they're good.
I like that they try to play it up as like a good thing. They're like, wow, 400. I'm so jealous.
Yeah.
So I think my favorite character... okay, I'm going back and forth between two options here.
Okay.
I think... I just love that there's a character still, and is still relevant, who just still wants to talk about Loom. I love the game Loom. We as a friend group recently engaged in that social media trend of making a grid of like your top 25 video games. I put Loom in my top 25, and I don't put a Monkey Island game in there.
Wow.
Yeah, Loom is fantastic. So I feel a kinship to this pirate who, in just very verbose ways, continues to hold up the merits of the 33-year-old video game by Brian Moriarty, Loom. So that's great that that's still around. Because what they could do, like when in Return, when they had Cobb show up, they could have said Thimbleweed Park. That makes all the sense in the world to me to do. They didn't do that.
Right.
In Sea of Thieves, they could have said Battletoads 2020. They didn't do it. They could have said any number of like Xbox exclusive. They could have said Starfield. Cobb
right,
but
Loom is just part of his character.
Loom,
now.
yeah, he's just Loom.
Loom specifically.
So I like that.
It's one of those jokes that is okay, but then like when you're still telling it 20 years later, it's only funnier.
Yeah. It's only like funnier, but like I get it though, because I've been telling my friends for the last at least 5 years, hey, you guys really should play Loom, and none of them have done it. So I feel that he might be in the same situation. Maybe he wants to wear a Thimbleweed Park button, but he can't give up on the Loom thing until Guybrush finally fucking plays Loom.
Yeah, well, he says in Return, he says like, I'm more button than man now.
Yeah. So I have that, but I think my real weekly guy is going to be Guybrush. The writing on Guybrush is done very well. Just the character of a man who has finally gotten everything he ever wanted, but he knows it's fake. But like he just can't come to that reality is a very fun thing. And Dominic Armato does a great job voicing him. The writing team on Sea of Thieves does a great job like finding that Ron Gilbert style of dialogue, that Dave Grossman style of dialogue very well. So yeah, I will say it is Guybrush.
I think Guybrush is a great choice. He's just such a likable doofus of a character, just all throughout the whole series. One thing I like about what they do with Guybrush here is they lean into the angle where he really wants that fame and glory. I feel like even with Curse, they kind of start moving away from it and start playing up the hapless, bumbling fool angle. But in 2, he's like a real jackass. He's like really like, hey, you want to hear me tell you about the time I beat LeChuck for the like 400th time?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that they're kind of playing into that a bit more after it being gone for so long.
Yeah, especially because in Return, he's like...
He's very humble.
Still that a little bit. Like he is clearly a person who used to be this way, but now he just is famous. Mm-hmm. So he's just sort of like, I don't know. I could talk about it or not.
And that was in Tales. Like that starts with Tales with like Morgan being his fanboy. That's such a cool. You get to see Guybrush just go from like a wannabe pirate to just actually being like a pirate legend.
It's a cool order of events to happen there, especially considering that Sea of Thieves is based on this concept of pirate fame. Just like the whole deal with the progression system in Sea of Thieves is that you need to get enough reputation with all of the people that matter in the larger groups in order to be considered a pirate legend, which in theory means that everyone on the Sea of Thieves just knows you. They don't really do anything in the game to make that come across, like they don't have NPCs recognize you more after you get more reputation, but the theory is that just in the world of the game that's happening.
Well, and in the player to player interactions, there is a sort of feeling of like if you are a newer player and you see another ship on the horizon that is another player, and you can see by the colors they're flying in the their cosmetics, that they are a pirate legend, it means something to you when you see that. You like, I'm a new guy. That guy's a pirate legend. That means
I don't want to mess with those guys.
Maybe I should be afraid of them, or maybe, you know, they have a lot of treasure because they're a higher level. So maybe I want to challenge them. And so there's that. And it's just a very sort of natural interaction. But yeah, that's the story of it. And I love the way that Guybrush is just like, he's completely disheveled when you find him. He's like playing with dolls.
Yeah, hair's all messed up.
His beard is all overgrown. And he's just happily like living in this fantasy. And he's happy to let all these other like conscious characters be trapped in his fantasy.
Yeah.
Like I you know, like they're all just like obsessed with him. Like he's the legend of Monkey Island. He's the best pirate that ever lived.
Obviously they're obsessed.
And he's like, well, this does make sense. This is how I could see this going down. Yeah.
Everyone loves me, and that is just how it's supposed to be.
Yeah, like he's clearly a messed up guy, but like he's ultimately a good guy. Showing that kind of like maniacal twist in a good character is not very common in media at all. So that it's cool to see that sometimes you can just be real messed up on the inside and still be a pretty great guy overall.
I think where he shines the most is when he actually kind of follows you down into the catacombs of LeChuck's lair while you're carrying the haunted head or whatever.
Yeah.
The head of the navigator. And like he's actually, as you're going through and doing stuff, he's just like making little comments on everything that are like funny quips. It's like the most you get to hear his dialogue like consistently throughout the 3 episodes. And he's just like, I'm gonna name this corridor Dave. And he's just like saying stupid shit, but it's like the stupid shit I like. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's good.
Right.
Yeah. I will say, though, back to like the collectible aspect of these tall tales, another reason they aren't great sometimes is I think that moment should be great. Just following the head of the navigator, directing you down this maze, listening to Guybrush talk. But then, like, as soon as you introduce this concept of within this maze, there's 5 books that LeChuck wrote and left around. And if you need to get 100% on this for a podcast, you're going to have to mostly just be annoyed that Guybrush keeps standing in front of you while you scour every corner for books. It really takes a lot of the joy of the storytelling and the joy of the atmosphere out of it. Just to come back to that point.
I get that.
But yeah, I do love that moment for the Guybrush stuff.
Yeah, that's like the one time where you're actually with Guybrush on this adventure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it kind of makes me think that, like, wow, if they had that technology, they should have done that more. that would have been fun.
They did it similar with the Jack Sparrow one on the where he's like not with you until like the 4th out of 5 tales, and then he's like consistently with you from that point on. I wonder if that's the best way to do it, because then it's like if he was with you if Guybrush was just following you around commenting on stuff, that could be great, or it could just get like annoying quickly.
Yeah, there was also like I don't know how much they were really thinking about this, but at the same time as that Pirates of the Caribbean arc came out, that was really in the dead center of, ooh, how do we feel about Johnny Depp kind of time period. So there was like a movement to put Pirates of the Caribbean in a place of like, oh, it's not just about Jack Sparrow. It's got other things. It's got a little bit else. And now I think that maybe things have quieted down. I don't really know how we landed with Johnny Depp, but I think it would have been more fun now to just sort of focus more on Jack Sparrow. I don't know if Rare was really considering that, or if they were just kind of thinking like, well, Jack Sparrow's a character, not an actor. But yeah,
right.
Anyway, let's transition over to our golden moments, and then we'll shut the show down. Golden moment. I'll go in reverse order and say that my golden moment, the height of my experience, Yeah, I did say earlier I didn't think of it yet. It's tough. I just think it's a lot of good Melee Island locale stuff. Like, I love being able to freely explore that town. That
Right. They do such a good job of translating it to a 3D space you can explore.
Yeah, like Jeff, I don't know how much you know about this, but the alleyway behind the church, sort of, that's like a really cosmically important place. And just sort of standing there and feeling in that moment I'm in this alleyway behind the church, it's cool. It's like a cool thing. It's
I'm in the famous alley.
To be in a first-person game in 3D space where I can walk around and like be in that alley where Redacted happens at the end of I think a few of the games. Very, very cool little moment just being there. And I'll say that. And I think that just comes down to like the set dressing of it all. Very, very
right.
Cool location to be in, that specific place in the Sea of Thieves mechanical style. Okay, and
totally.
And Jeff, if we're going reverse order, it's you next.
Well, so just like on a high level, the thing that like by far stands out to me as like my favorite thing about these, it is, and it's kind of across all moments, is just like environments that you get to be in that aren't typically in Sea of Thieves. Towns, forests, big lush jungles, like giant spaces to explore. And I love that. So I totally get what you're saying with the church and the alley and everything. But I think just like in like a general sense, being able to see types of architecture, types of nature that you
lots of colors you don't normally
colors
see,
you don't see. We talked about today when we were playing. Me and Dustin played it earlier today. The like the bright turquoises and bright red rocks when you're in Monkey Island. You're like climbing up the mountain with like the little pools of water and the bright red rocks. And then like when you're in the forest with all of the blues and purples and like the moonlight. But I would say the golden moment for me is when you think that Elaine is sleeping in the bed in the mansion, and then it's three monkeys.
Yeah.
And they come running out.
Elaine was three monkeys the whole time.
Honestly, it's like a type of gag that you don't see very often in Sea of Thieves because it requires like an animation, like actual monkeys pop up and run away, and like they don't really do a lot of that. There's not a lot of scripted, on-railed, like animated moments in Sea of Thieves like that. Only on these types of tall tales do you get that. And there's like one like that in the third tale when you trap Herman in his own trap, where like a monkey comes down to drink the banana soup or whatever. Yeah. But yeah, I think that the three monkeys coming out, and do they like jump out the window or run up the chimney or something?
Yeah, I think they jump out the window. They're just like scattering around, little monkeys.
It's just like dumbly joyous.
Mm-hmm.
I just get a lot of joy out of that moment.
That's a great one.
It's a surprise, and it's like fun and joyous. I like it.
Right.
Oh, if I can just say one more thing about that first episode, you also get to go in the clock tower, and I think that's like a full construction of something that you just never ever actually do.
So
it's just a cool way that they're not only copying Monkey Island's things, but like expanding on what they're doing.
You never go in that clock tower.
Yeah, you never go in that clock tower. I don't think you ever go in that bedroom, Elaine's bedroom.
Well, and also that whole mansion, the governor's mansion. Again, it's like so unlike anything else in Sea of Thieves because like you don't visit like civilized like towns in Sea of Thieves very often, but then you've got this mansion and it's so grabbed by the ghoulies. It's this like mansion in the moonlight up on the hill, and honestly, Sea of Thieves really has a grabbed by the ghoulies aesthetic to it at times.
Yeah,
in the way that it depicts like cartoonish, stylized,
kind of wonky
human beings,
wonky
geometry and things. And again, this is sort of like how we talked about how niche Monkey Island is. Grabbed by the ghoulies is not. That's like niche among niche things. But I'm sitting here like on the Monkey Island podcast talking about how I like that Sea of Thieves reminded me of Grabbed by the Ghoulies. So we're getting into the weeds with that.
Yeah,
And
I know
also
you
that,
listened to
like-
the Courtney episode last week, where I think we talked about the fact that Grab by the Ghoulies has just been coming up in conversation
bring
a
that
lot
up.
recently. But like I feel like that's a natural way that you just brought it up again. That's man, maybe it's a really important work of art.
Maybe everything like naturally ties to Grab by the Ghoulies.
Maybe
Like,
maybe
ahead
it's
of its
time
time.
for society to earthbound Grab by the Ghoulies.
That's what they need
Get
to do.
on it, everybody.
Dustin said on our stream today that the head of the Navigator looks like the mummy from Grab by the Ghoulies, and now
It
I
does.
can't unsee it, and I'm just like,
I mean, doesn't it just kind of look like a mummy?
but it's
Well,
got
it
the
looks
wonky
like the
one
exact
eye.
mummy
It's-
from Ghoulies.
it's
got,
yeah,
like,
the
one
eye in the
one
same
eye
spot, the way
popping
its
out.
teeth work.
It's popped
Because I don't
out
think
the
that's
right
how
way.
the head looks in Secret of Monkey Island either.
It's
Yeah,
close.
they definitely reinterpret it a little.
Yeah, yeah. It has to be.
Yeah, in Secret of Monkey Island, it's just like a human
In Secret
head.
of Monkey Island, it's truly gross. So like they
Yeah.
do need to change it quite a bit in order to make it fit.
Yeah, like that. The game's already scary enough when like Stan is following you, and there's like a circus in the forest. Like, come
Yeah,
on.
and it's the Halloween
That's the-
episode.
That was the Halloween episode.
One other thing I like is you see a lot of trees you don't normally see
Yeah.
in the Sea of Thieves. Where like going through the forest, you see all those like pine trees. It's just such a cool way to mix
Yeah.
it up.
Dustin, what's your golden moment?
So I had two. One is more just like what I think is a cool part of the story, and one is just like a personal choice. The one I think is just a cool part of the story is just the end battle with LeChuck. I thought was very cool, doing the ship battle in like a river of lava. That's just like an awesome set piece. But I think the best time I had in all three of these tall tales is when it was Jeff, Heil, Cameron, and we were trying to get the best time on the Fettuccine Brothers little circus obstacle course. That was fun. Just like
Yeah.
everyone taking turns because like it's not hard to just like do it, but one of the commendations is to do it in under 25 seconds. And that was pretty hard. So we just, it took turns, all four of us going and going until, and then each of us needed to do it. So yeah, that was just a fun time.
it's-
Probably the time I remember the most.
It's fun because then like every time you fail, the music kind of goes wonky, like "Brah, brah," or whatever, and then like the Fettuccine Brothers will be like I don't remember.
Oh, so sorry.
So sorry, and I'm just like, all right, this is awesome. I don't even feel bad that I lost because he's so funny. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I love that. I love a lot of the points in Sea of Thieves where they try like some sort of dexterity challenge. It's not often because the game really isn't built to be a platformer, but you have a jump button. And there's some things sometimes where you can be like, okay, ring this bell and then go walk across a rope. And it's just a fun little thing to put in the middle of doing all your pirate stuff.
Yeah, and the music for that part is so good. I really liked all the music throughout, just hearing like the music of the Monkey Island series interpreted in a different way. Like when you're on Monkey Island itself, you have like the music from the game. It's the theme for Monkey Island, but they mix in the Sea of Thieves theme in there as well. It's just really
Do we
cool.
know if all that new Monkey Island music in Sea of Thieves is Beanland?
It is.
It is?
Well,
Cool.
no, it's probably not all Beanland. Chloe Kwok, also, I believe, if I remember correctly, I've watched a couple of their behind the scenes videos, and I think she might have done, or at least just assisted on, like the circus theme, because she was talking about like the ways that they actually vary it every loop, and like put different instruments forward to like subtly make it not become as like mundane when you hear it over and over and over and over. But like Beanland was the one talking about how they blended the Monkey Island theme with the Sea of Thieves theme, and how he had to kind of tweak it a little to make them line up, and he was happy with that. So really their whole music team does a great job. But yeah, Robin Beanland and Chloe Kwok are the two that we see their faces on the videos most. So I assume the two of them are maybe the most involved with the compositions. But Yeah, I love the music. I loved everything you said, Dustin. New types of trees.
New types of trees.
It's great.
Yeah.
I wanted
It does
to
have those trees.
I wanted to comment on the river of lava battle thing you said, because the whole time I was doing, like, when you're in that big open chamber, like chasing LeChuck's ship around, I couldn't shake this feeling that I was like, if Sea of Thieves had come out 20 years earlier, and it wasn't an MMO, if it was just like a regular FPS with like maps, like GoldenEye, like you choose the map you want to play on, like that is what that room felt like to me. It felt like being in a multiplayer map. Like if Sea of Thieves was that kind of multiplayer game, you would have the map that's like the lava arena, and you would have the map that's like the ghost arena.
Right. Let's play on the lava stage.
Yeah.
Right.
I will say that part, it was so frustrating to me. Here's a little trick. You can turn the Mad Monkey around. They don't want you to do that. If you turn it around, it's very hard to unturn it around.
Oh, no need to tell me. I got when I was playing with friends last night, I got our ship stuck, and boy, it took a while to get out of there. Luckily, LeChuck doesn't take that opportunity to like leave and escape and win.
Yeah, and this is another opportunity, or another part of the game where like anything you do with a ship, especially this size, is built with multiple people in mind. Even this, where they kind of give the cannons to Guybrush and Elaine as NPCs, so they let Guybrush and Elaine shoot. You still need to control both the angle you're driving the ship and the speed of the ship, which is like really hard to do if you're just by yourself.
Yeah, I was playing with 2 other people, so it worked out. Like, one person was controlling the ship and one was on, like, the side cannons. I can't imagine...
Oh, one was on side
like,
cannons? I wasn't even allowed to shoot the cannons.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I can't imagine that being very easy when you can't get hits on LeChuck yourself.
Well, so I didn't have much of a problem with it, but I will say that, like, the controls on that galleon are different than just a galleon in an open Sea of Thieves world. Like they made everything like the turn radius is faster. The raising up the anchor is way faster, because raising an anchor by yourself on a galleon is really slow, because the game is designed for you to like do that activity with multiple crewmates to make it go faster. But like raising the anchors, raising the sails, turn radius, max speed, all of those stats are different in that fight to make it like more manageable. I didn't have much of a problem with it, but yeah, I mean, it wasn't like my favorite or anything. It's not like a very difficult battle or anything. There's like, I don't think there's a way for you to lose.
No, if you get hit, it's just Guybrush and Elaine stop shooting for a while.
Yeah, like you don't have to repair the damage to stop yourself from sinking or anything like that. Yeah, it's fine. It's okay. Honestly, yeah. I
just thought it was a cool set piece.
I think the overworld puzzles on Monkey Island are so much more fun to me than everything that happens in the second half of that tale. But...
Well, I even like the LeChuck fighting a lot, but the ship stuff is just like, I guess that's the biggest and maybe the part that proved to be actually incongruous bit between Monkey Island and Sea of Thieves, of like, you don't do a lot of actually being on a ship in Monkey Island.
Yeah.
And it's combining those felt pretty wonky at the end, in my opinion. But the tonal stuff going on with the music and the story and stuff, that all worked out pretty well.
Yeah, totally.
The visuals of coming into the lava chamber and seeing LeChuck's ghost dread galleon or whatever parked there, obviously it's like a recreation of the screen from Monkey Island. But obviously it's like so visually appealing in like the colors and everything. But also it's fascinating because Sea of Thieves already like did a send up of that image.
Yeah.
With Captain Flameheart, the first time you enter his lair, the Heart of Fire, and you see his ghost galleon parked in a sea of lava, it's like clearly an homage to Monkey Island, and that came out all the way back in 2019, I think. So, or it was early 2020 actually. And that was like way before they ever even dreamed that they were gonna touch the Monkey Island IP. But they were just like, yeah, we're gonna like make.
They just wanted to homage
a big homage to LeChuck in Monkey Island, and then now that actual scene is in Sea of Thieves now. That's a weird thing.
Yeah.
Would Tom Holland be a good Guybrush?
You mean like the director or the Spider-Man?
I mean the Spider-Man.
No.
Okay.
No, actually, maybe.
Oh.
I think he's kind of got a dorky
he's
enough
affable.
quality that
he's
it
got
could work.
That affable quality in the same kind of way. And he's young enough, but not like so young that... Because I don't think Guybrush is a kid, but he's not established at all.
Yeah.
I don't think he's funny.
You don't think Tom Holland's funny? I think Spider-Man's pretty funny.
I don't know. I think Spider-Man's funny. I don't think Tom Holland's funny.
Do you think he could be
if Tom
funny
Holland
if
can
given
be
the
funny
opportunity?
to be Spider-Man, I assume he could be to be Guybrush in the same way.
Yeah, could be, but
I should have specified that this is for a movie and not like a life change for Tom Holland.
Do you think he should just be Guybrush in real life?
Yeah, that's a big part of it.
It is, yeah. No, if they did it, so you're saying if they cast a movie? I don't know. Tom Holland is not my first pick, but
who's your first
probably
pick?
Not.
Didn't we had this discussion on a different episode? I don't think I had it. Yeah, who would you pick, Jeff?
Man, that's a tough one. It would probably be a relatively young actor that I currently don't even know. It might like a relative like a relative nobody. Because I don't know a lot of young actors. I know
I do think he's at least in his 20s though. He's not like a teen.
No. And Tom Holland is one of those guys who like seems younger than he is.
Mm-hmm.
Because he plays a high schooler on Spider-Man, but he's like 40. He's not like 40. That's a lie. But
yeah, he's like 50.
Yeah, and yeah, I don't know. I would pick a person with blonde hair, I think.
That's a good pick,
the easiest thing to change about Tom Holland. No, that one can just happen.
No, I don't know. We'll agree to disagree.
Yeah, because like Tom Holland is always the one that's brought up in like cast a young man, Tom Holland. Everyone else is old. Everyone else in Hollywood is an old man.
That's actually true.
Yeah, he's just the one that we always bring up. But I do kind of think he's got a little Guybrush in him.
I'd be
much
fine
more
with it.
than Nathan Drake. I mean, that's way different. That's way more different.
That was
bad. He did that.
Yeah,
that was definitely like they were going for a different thing there. That was weird casting.
Yeah.
That was like intentionally out there casting.
I can't really think of anyone young and bright-eyed enough to do Guybrush. You need to be really bright.
They don't have any.
Yeah, huh.
They're all out of bright eyes.
The eyes of our generation has dimmed at a young age.
Yeah, you need a slightly younger male version of Margot Robbie. Someone who can just be like, "Hey guys, what's going on?" Is that whole vibe?
We doing pirate stuff over here?
I was just thinking I could be a pirate. I don't know.
Why not?
That's been our show. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jeff. We went longer than we have been going in a very long time. I think we just like talking to you.
Yeah. I'd say this is up there for one of our longest ones.
I'm sorry.
No, we've gone way longer.
No, it's good.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, especially like we've done like a 3-hour one for the finale of Walking Dead.
We haven't finished this one yet, so we could get there.
We might. Yeah.
Go.
If we just keep talking about how long it is.
Yeah. So first is Bulbasaur. And then is Ivysaur. Next week we're going to be talking about Dangeresque, the Rumisode Triungulate, as we head into the middle of our Cavalcade of Incidentals, our weird bit where we're just doing a lot of one-off episodes before we kind of get back on track. Dangeresque, the Rumisode Triungulate is, of course and obviously, a sequel to Episode 4 specifically of Strong Bad's Cool Game for Attractive People, Dangeresque 3, the Criminal Projective. It's also just like a different game that was made by the creators of Homestar Runner and is now on Steam for like $7. I haven't played it yet, so I'm excited to play it for next week. We're going to be joined by a friend of mine named Eric Giels, if everything goes right. He has not been on the show before at all. or even in this like little community of people that we've kind of built around the show. So be excited for that. And in the meantime, I do want to say Saturday the 21st. Saturday the 21st is where we're aiming to do this. You have about a week and a half notice if you're listening to this when it comes out. We are going to be doing a Twitch stream of as much as we can fit of a full playthrough. It might not be close. But as much as we can fit of a full playthrough of Law & Order Legacies, the Telltale game that you really can't get anywhere. I managed to get a copy out of some difficult things to do. So I have it. I have a legally paid for copy of Law & Order Legacies. We're going to be playing it. I'll be the one in the driver's seat, and Dustin's just going to be there on voice. Please come by. It's our first live Telling the Tale, and definitely our only thing we're ever going to do live for Telling the Tale. So that'll be fun. That'll be I think it'll be on my Twitch stream. I'll figure that out. On Twitch, I'm called Wolf FM. You'll also see a link in the show notes to this. And if you follow on social media, we'll try to throw it out on social media. So yeah, that's on the 21st of October. Please join in and watch some Law & Order stuff that you won't find probably. I'm going to level with you. I don't know if you'll find the game interesting.
Yeah, try as you might, you won't.
Well, okay, Dustin's basing a lot of his personality right now off his feelings.
I dare you to be interested.
He's basing his feelings off of how he feels about CSI games from Telltale. And that just is...
No, I'm sure it'll...
just a different show. Just a different show.
Totally different.
Totally different.
That's true.
They
are different shows.
Dustin, if it make you feel any better, this is the one that has that sound effect. Dun dun.
Yeah.
You know what? Now I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it.
It'll be
I didn't
right
know
at the
that
beginning,
about the
and then
sound
you have
effect.
to coast for 7 episodes.
I got what I came here for.
Legitimately, though, this is, I think we can safely say, it's the rarest Telltale game.
Definitely.
Yeah, by like a lot, almost. Only like the CSI games kind of come close, but we were kind of just able to do those. This one very legitimately difficult to make work. So it's a little bit of a historical thing. So please join us then. And until next time, thank you again, Jeff, for coming. You've been great, and I'm very happy for the Sea of Thieves expertise you've been able to donate upon us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
And until next time, have a great summer.
I did.